One thing I hear on repeat from homeschool moms is that the clutter makes them feel crazy. There's kind of like mental chaos, mental clutter that is just too much because of the stuff in front of them. So let's talk about decluttering your homeschool life. If we haven't met, I'm Teresa Wiedrich, the certified life coach and homeschool mentor, found here in the Homeschool Mama support group on Facebook. I'm also on the Homeschool Life Coach channel on Instagram, where I just had a live discussing decluttering your mind. It's your emotions, your thoughts, all the things related to your mind. You want to check it out, you can go over on Instagram. If you're not already on Instagram, you're going to find that discussion on my YouTube channel by the end of the day. You might even hear it on my podcast, Homeschool Mama Self-Care Podcast. Yesterday, I released a podcast episode about this discussion on decluttering your homeschool. Where to start? There's just too much, right? There's just too much stuff in our minds, too much stuff cluttering up our relationships at times, too much stuff definitely cluttering up our homeschool bookshelves and our gloved box in our cars and the junk drawers, and so much possible decluttering that happens. I'm curious if you have a specific area in your homeschool right now that feels too cluttered, whether it's your mind, your relationships, a specific zone in your home, your minivan, wherever. I'm curious what you would say. So I just had a delightful conversation with Gervais last week, and she was sharing with me, it's just so freaking funny. She was sharing with me that she wants to leave laundry behind. She wants to pile or have someone pile all of her belongings on the front lawn. She wants to leave to the mall to try to find a homeschool uniform, a tunic to be specific, homeschool tunic. And she wants to come home, have all of her belongings on the front lawn so she can decide which things go back into the house. And I pre-warned her that would be a lot of work. Probably not worth your time. You cannot Marie Kondo every item you own as a homeschool mom. Not if you actually also want to do anything else for your entire homeschool life. So she might be joking about buying those tunics. Like maybe, maybe not, right? Tell me, Gervais, is it true? Would you do it? If there was a homeschool tunic option on Etsy, would you buy it? But don't you just feel her pain? Like the amount of laundry that we experience. And that's just laundry. We're not even talking about dishes. We're not talking about going to the grocery store to buy more food, especially when they start getting older. That's not a myth. And you're already doing second breakfast. Just wait until your kids are 13 to 15. And all of a sudden you just are always going to the grocery store. But there's all those things, which I know you already know. And it feels like it's cluttered in itself because there's so many things you've got to do. We're not even talking about the homeschool room. Like, there's too many things to organize there. So why does this thing matter, this decluttering thing? Do I even have to answer? I know you know. It's because it feels kind of much inside there. I was really tickled to see the research. There is research that tells us that women in particular are bothered by the chaos or the stuff that's going on outside of us, and it directly affects our level of peace and presence. So there's research on that. I share about it in my podcast episode this week. But there's also, there's a desire for order. And I don't know if you're one of those moms like me who likes order. If we had met and we'd had coffee together before I homeschooled, before I had kids, I shone the taps for you. I mean, nothing was out of place. Everything was pristine. And in the real estate world, they call it immaculate. It was immaculate. Now, fast forward a couple decades. I'm 25 years into this family life thing. And if you're coming over for coffee, I assume that we're good friends and you can handle seeing my mess or seeing the dirty. And I've practiced my way into that. That was not my default setting. That was my approach to order and cleanliness and tidiness. I wanted everything lined up. And probably like you've come to understand, like I have, it ain't happening. You live in this space. You are in this homeschool family space all the time. if the kids get taken away for, maybe their dad or a friend or mom take the kids away for an afternoon and you are in your own home by yourself, and you did what I did for a while. I'd clean for 20 minutes and then I would settle in and enjoy my quiet, which by the way didn't happen very often, but when it did, that's what I did. It only stayed clean because no one was there. That's the only way it stays clean. When we live in this space, it's going to get untidy. It just is. So I'm going from a place in my own journey from kind of on the OCD side, I got taught well, to fast forward 25 years. I'm like, we're friends. You can handle the floor. In fact, we're friends. You can check out my Instagram feed. I have put my dirty dishes in my kitchen on Instagram. Not that you needed to see it, but because I'm just like, it's real. Nobody has perfection. That's not real. If you have perfection, it's because you don't have kids in your home all the time, or possibly can afford, a nanny and house cleaner, and most of us can't. So this decluttering thing is part of our journey. We have to figure out how to get rid of the physical clutter, get rid of the mental clutter, sometimes get rid of the relational clutter. Let's talk about that for a second. So, okay, first of all, I just want to affirm your home is not always going to stay clean, but you already knew that. I have one kiddo at home officially now, and it's still not perfectly clean, and he's not here all the time. It isn't going to get clean. So unless you want at the end of your days to have your gravestone say, she had an immaculate home, just let it go. Let it go. Let it go. No, I won't sing the Frozen song, but really it won't work. You have to practice letting go. And also, let's talk about physical clutter. The only way that you can really manage physical clutter is by not buying stuff. Do not bring new stuff into your home. Really very, very possible to do this, or to do a lot less of this. It is possible. We all can bring in less stuff, but also learn how to hold things loosely and say, okay, it has a service and a function for me. And if this thing, whatever it is that is cluttering our world, or we feel like it's clutter, if it's too much and we're always feeling bugged by it, but it's not really serving a purpose, then we need to let it go. How to actually process that or go about that? Well, join me in the Confident Homeschool Mom Collective. We can talk about practical decluttering stuff, but I'll just summarize that physical clutter usually is the first thing that people are thinking about. And the best way to really approach that is just by buying less and not being as attached to the practical things. The second type of clutter is mental clutter, big emotions, clutter our mental space. Sometimes it is heavier than a pile of laundry inside of us. Maybe we're carrying false guilt or unrealistic expectations, self-judgment. Maybe we're preoccupied with perfectionism because it's trying to mask our feelings of good enough. Consider setting aside time each day to look at your big emotions. Look at what's going on in here. You can use my Big Emotions Journaling Workbook or grab a notebook. The Big Emotions Journaling Workbook has a variety of prompts that are designed for homeschool moms to specifically talk to homeschool moms about their specific challenges and areas that are pretty common for moms' mental clutter. So think about mental clutter. That's a second possibility. And also relational clutter. Relationships can get cluttered. Kind of like, when you're not showing up intentionally, authentically who you really are, and you're doing things for other people because you feel like that they are requiring you to, or you're feeling like you're having to resist, but you're not having the conversation with that person, that can be a form of relational clutter, not being your true self. Maybe, you're answering the phone in your homeschool days when you've told your aunt so-and-so that you're not available at that time, but it seems easier just to grab the phone and answer instead of actually have that uncomfortable conversation. When we declutter this space, the relational space, we're freeing ourselves to bring the best of ourselves in the relationships and really live into what matters most. So relational clutter is the third form of clutter. Now let's talk about the lists, the systems, the routines that we can use. And this is a brief flyover. So if you want to listen to more discussion on how I practically did things, and also how you might use certain ideas in your own homeschool, then go over to my podcast, the Homeschool Mama Self-Care Podcast, because that's the latest episode. And I do a much deeper dive into that. Having said that, caveat, I already know you and I aren't the same. Probably if you don't value routines and lists and systems and decluttering, you haven't listened this far. So, but if, there's some people that really just don't care about this stuff. They're like, no, I'm good. So great. Enjoy. And if you are staying around this long, I'm guessing that you're thinking there might be other areas where you can declutter. There might be systems or lists or routines that you could incorporate into your homeschool family life. So I'll just bring in a few. If you already don't have a place to plan your week, it's useful for you just to look at a planner, look at all the extracurriculars, and imagine each day in blocks. Actually time block every hour of your day. Tedious as that might sound, it frees you up to intentionally include the things that matter to you and also to delete the things that don't. Create margins around the activities that you do so you have more space to breathe and just be, and also to plan to get to places. That was my biggest challenge, is actually getting out the door in a timely fashion and create enough space for kids to get their extra, all the things for their extracurriculars so that we can make it on time to some place instead of just like, oh, we have to be there at 3. It's 2:55. Let's go. That was my default setting. But to actually create margins around the activities that matter to us. We can create lists for our errands. There's an app that I use called Listonics. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. But as a family, everyone can add different grocery things that they want on the list. My youngest kiddo is 16. So, there's not a lot of 5-year-olds that are going to have an app. Mommy, I want some, really want those fish things. I don't know. Maybe that would work with your kiddo. I'm not sure I would have given my kiddo that app at that time. But there's, grocery apps. For myself, from the pandemic, the one benefit of the pandemic is that there was this challenge that my daughter signed up for. It was about figuring out what's in your pantry and how you could keep it stocked. It was so simple. And I didn't sign up for it because I thought it was too boring, even in the early year or months of the pandemic. And she wrote down every single thing that was in our pantry, my daughter, and she kept track of all the things that were already in there, and then deciding what are the main meals that we eat typically, and do we need to keep stock. And if we did, then she would write that ingredient on the list. She would line up my pantry so that everything was fully aligned. And so then when we ran out of cannellini beans and there was only like 2 cans of cannellini beans, we knew that we typically used 8 in a month. So then we would make sure to get, 6 more cans. And that was her way of, occupying time during the pandemic. But also it was a way for us to figure out how to organize the pantry. And we did the same thing for the freezer and for the fridge. And we've pretty much maintained that since. And it's been a very useful approach. It really comes down to not having to make so many choices, that you don't actually have to think through so many choices. Because I don't know if you're like me. I'm at the phase where I'm really not that motivated to cook anymore. I just don't have the verve. I do it a couple times a week if I have to, but I'm just not motivated. But for the first 8 years of family life, I was doing fancy stuff, and I did not have time for this stuff while I had little kids. And then I moved into the homeschool phase, and I did not remember that I was also eating today and also feeding other people today. It felt like just too many things on my list. And the food that became my fast food was fish fillets, like the good old fashioned frozen fish fillets, besa or halibut or cod or something simple, really simple. But it became a fast food because it really was fast. It would cook quickly from frozen. Then I'd make some rice, and that was, and some vegetables. And that was Monday for like a decade, it was actually a decade, I chose 6 meals and repeated them for about 8 to 10 years, unless we were traveling somewhere. Boring, hey? So boring. The kids still think of Wednesdays as vegetarian night. That's when we had bean chili and cornbread. And so much so that I cannot eat this anymore. If I come to your place and you serve that, I will eat it, but I just have no interest in that. But that's what I did. The 7th day was for my very favorite meal, leftovers. Can I hear an amen? Are you like me? Leftovers are my very favorite meal. I don't have to think about cooking. Somebody's already created put a lot of effort into something. Actually, my son made chicken parm yesterday. Not very long ago, he made lasagna. Are you kidding me? You can cook. I'm not motivated for that kind of cooking anymore. I will clean the dishes I would rather do dishes than cook at this point. But come up with a plan for your grocery menu. If you would like to look at those menu plans, you're welcome to join me in the Confident Homeschool Mom Collective on Friday. I can chat about that. Or if you're not able to come, I can get you the links to the blog posts that I created around each of those meals, because I actually created separate blog posts for each of them. I've got photos from way back then, my kids cooking, all the things. Or you can just pull out your 6 favorite meals and then say, we're going to make these for the next, 2 weeks until they become so familiar. And I don't have to put any mental effort into planning them. They just, boom, appear in my mind. They're already in my freezer, my pantry, and my fridge, all the ingredients, because I've got a system for that. And now I don't have to think anymore. Okay, so that's groceries and meal planning. I'm going to talk about self-care checklists, because this is the Homeschool Mama self-care page on Facebook, the Homeschool Mama support group. And this is the title of my book, is Homeschool Mama Self-Care, Nurturing the Nurturer. So I actually have a variety of self-care checklists. If any of these sound like something you might want, just let me know. I've got the reminders for mental self-care. I had a deeper discussion on Instagram about that, the thought care self-care, the thought care checklist. I've got a building boundary checklist. There's a big emotions checklist, and a variety of others, but I'll leave it at that. So I want you to be able to look after yourself. That's most definitely my goal here as a certified life coach and homeschool mentor in this space, is for you to learn how to take care of you and address your real needs. So if you're interested in any of those, let me know. Some of the systems that I created, morning routine systems, both for myself and my kids, I share a little more on the podcast. I noticed that a lot of people are doing weekly planning on Sundays. In the beginning, I did a made-for-you teaching curriculum, that like a teacher's manual with the curriculum, and I would follow what they gave me, and I would try to fulfill everything every day. And I felt really guilty when I didn't. And then I was like feeling really bad about myself after about, 3 months, when I'm like, there ain't no way I'm going to get through this stuff by the end of the year. Well, my encouragement to you is to take it with a grain of salt. If you buy something like that, you don't have to do everything. And you're homeschooling. You can do this out of the box. You can be outside of the box, of the curriculum box too. But you can choose to do it in whatever form or fashion you want to do it. You can just use it as a resource tool. You can not buy that curriculum, so it doesn't make you feel like you have to do it. But the key is to ask yourself, is the curriculum or the routines or the things that you're planning for your kids, are they serving your kids? Are they serving you? These things are supposed to serve you. You're not supposed to serve them. So that's a discussion on the weekly planning. And then I share in detail about the chore system. I'm a believer of everybody participates. That's how I roll. I always have. At some point, I really did have a housekeeper when I was challenged. Let me think. It was between the 3rd and the 4th kids, I think, before we moved to another province. And that was highly recommended. I was prepping for homeschooling at that point. I was researching for it. But I wasn't officially homeschooling yet. But I'd hired a homeschool teenager to help me after my third daughter was born. It was so helpful. If you need house help, find a homeschool teen. But a chore system, very loosely, I mean, it changed over the course of time. I've done things differently over the course of time. I try not to put too much like rigidity to it, because as you and I know, certain kids at certain ages, they're just not doing it the way you're doing it. And sometimes you need to follow that up, because sometimes you can just let it go and say, it's okay. It is what it is. And sometimes you're like, no, I need to do this later. But learning, that they're at different ages and they can't handle doing the same things that everyone's doing, or as the older siblings are doing, or sometimes somebody has, like my kiddo this week, my kiddo who's almost 16, he's got significant physics homework in an honors physics class, and he wants to be in this class. And so he's putting a lot of work into it, like 5-6 hours of studies at home. And that's not even the class. And I'm, I would not have signed up for that class, but this is not me. This is not my journey. But this class is meaningful to him. He's got reasons to do it. And so it interfered with him finishing all the chores. And I was flexible because I had to be, or I wanted to be, because I want him to be able to pursue this thing and to do it well. And so then I took over the chores. So you have to learn to build in flexibility for various reasons. But probably the simplest way that you can approach chores is to have a few things that you do together before your morning studies, if that's a routine that you already do, and then clean everything up by the end of the day, whatever time that is, before you leave the studies. And then maybe before dinner, you spend 5 minutes doing like a quick cleanup of everything, if that is valuable to you. And then on Saturdays or Sunday, you can devote an hour, 2 hours to everybody collectively pulling a chore from a hat, or, alternating different chores, and just working for an hour or 2 hours, or whatever number you have in mind, and saying, okay, and then say, okay, after the end of that, I'm done. We're no longer going to do any more. We blocked off an hour or two each week to do a full clean of all the things that are most meaningful to you. Not full clean, because that would not clean the entire house, but enough to make it feel presentable and prevent the social worker from visiting you. So that's enough time for you to spend your life cleaning, and then you can move on, do the next thing. At the end of a day, or at the end of your day, a decluttered homeschool isn't about perfect. You're not going to get to perfect. It won't always be perfect. But creating space for what really matters, like cleaning, because it matters, just not all the time. And you don't need to have an immaculate home where everyone remembers so well your beautiful, immaculate home that at the end of the days, it's on your gravestone. You don't need that kind of immaculate perfection. It's okay to have a messy, imperfect home. Just want to declare it. If you want to visit, let me know, and you'll discover that indeed, I'm not kidding you. I will be friends with you, and you will know we're friends because I invited you into my imperfect home. And if you have a routine already around all the most important things, but you're feeling like, you know what, this isn't enough. Having routines and lists and systems and understanding that there's 3 different kinds of clutter, it's not enough. But I don't know why, and I don't know how to unpack this. I just feel kind of overwhelmed. If that's you, I put on a free webinar last week called Reclaim Your Homeschool Joy, and From Overwhelmed to On Purpose. Yeah. And so we talk about all of these things in that. And so if you would like access to that webinar, just let me know and I will get you the link for that. And next week, I'm going to offer a specific workshop called the Homeschool Reset Workshop. I'm really excited about this because this is going to help you unpack overwhelm, your specific reasons for your experience of overwhelm. We're going to do a variety of strategies, certain things. We're going to do certain activities, whether it's with other homeschool moms or just you and I, but we're going to do a variety of strategies or use a variety of strategies to help you understand what's really going on inside here and why you feel overwhelmed. And we're actually going to create or make sure that you understand your triggers. We're going to talk about that mental self-care that I shared about before. And we're going to make sure that by the end, you have some tools that really are going to help you move from overwhelmed to being more purposeful in your homeschool. So that's a 2-hour session, Tuesday. What month are we in? November 5th, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ask me for the link for that. It's going to be a really great time. We're going to go deep into the things to figure out what's really going on for you and help you begin your journey. If you have not already addressed some of that overwhelm, we're going to begin your journey of going deeper into the big things inside here, into the decluttered mind. So ask me for details if you're curious about that. Okay. And again, there's that Big Emotions Journaling Workbook. If you're curious about that, ask me for that, or the Thought Care Checklist. There's always that. Or check out the rest of the episode about decluttering your homeschool over on the Homeschool Mama Self-Care podcast. I hope you have a beautiful week, and we'll see you soon.